All right, we are now recording. We're talking about Brady Bunch and Jimmy Buffett. So we have Councilman Varenrin, Cuoto, former Councilman Alvaro Medeiros, Laura,
hang on,
Town Asshole, John Leo, and Richard Leister. I want to welcome everybody, and we're here to talk about trees. I don't know anything about this stuff, but it's been a big part of the discussion in town. A lot of people care about it. I'm not sure, and I don't know about you, Laura, but I'm not really sure. I know that there's a concern around trees getting cut and water and all that stuff, but I don't know the intricacies of this. And I think the purpose of this is just to kind of get everyone on board to, just I guess let the community know why this is important, what makes it important, and what's happening sort of at the local government level, maybe even the state level, federal level. If you believe in the Illuminati, maybe that level, as to what's going on with the trees. I just don't. I want to be very clear. I'm not going to support communist trees, and I've told John Leo that. All right, no communist trees.
You got that, John?
You got that?
He's getting 10 trees planted on his property tomorrow.
I don't want any government trees on my lawn. All right. So who wants to start off with, kind of giving us a rundown as to just an overview of this? Does anybody want to kind of jump in on that?
So my
I can do it
recommendation.
in like 2 seconds, and Richard or Alvaro, yeah, because I think Alvaro, you're going to take over from this, and so is Richard. But the one thing I think I noticed in the community was people were concerned about flooding, and my connection has always been that trees are part of that resolution. If you plant trees, our resolution is dated in 1976. It needs to be updated. Towns around us have been updated more recently, and more are getting updated now. This is where I need Richard or Alvaro to help me. Now I don't know how far they're getting on this. I'm trying to get the information. They're actually going to take the tree ordinance and put it part of the MS4 permit. So it actually will be part of the stormwater language in the state. Do you guys know more about that?
Well, I'd like to get. So I don't know what any of that shit means. M4. That sounds like a British, kind of like Secret Service thing. So whoever, Alvaro, Rich, can you give us sort of a rundown on what, like a very kind of like pretend I'm in kindergarten and teach me what's going on?
So, Rich, you want to talk about the value of trees?
I'm trying to talk, but I'm seeing a message that my extensions may affect the quality of my call. I'm not sure what's going on.
You're coming through okay. Don't worry about that.
Loud and clear.
Yeah, okay. Then I'm going to dismiss that. Okay. So, I mean, what John just said about trees and stormwater, it's a puzzle to me, too, because as the Environmental Commission chair, we have a community forestry management program, which basically is a document that says how we are taking care of trees in our town. We developed that with a certified tree expert and the town tree inspector. That's been in effect for more than 20 years. And then we started to see this message that there's a new tree ordinance going to be developed. I guess everybody saw that the Manny and Jeff, you saw that too, that there was a notification that there's a new model tree ordinance. At first, I think that's what they were calling it. At this point, it's coming from the stormwater management department of the DEP. And I was surprised at that, but the connection is definitely between stormwater management and trees. So, certainly trees help to mitigate stormwater runoff. So maybe that's why that's becoming a more important part of what they call the MS4 permit, which is basically municipal stormwater, separate stormwater and sewer permit. And that was a surprise to me as a commissioner. Jeff, maybe you had some conversations with people at the EP. I don't know.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Unfortunately, they have not responded to my multiple reach outs yet, but I too was surprised that this was part of the stormwater space. I know it's relevant, but we've always kind of come at this from the different angle here, where it's been more about maintaining the forest and that kind of angle.
Wait, so doesn't the ordinance? So it feels like this ordinance came as a surprise. Like, isn't the town council responsible for the ordinance, or is this just sort of like?
No, what happens is we have an ordinance in place right now for trees.
Okay.
And the Environmental Commission, Jeff, myself, and a few others were actively talking about changing and updating the ordinance. While we're going back and forth on trying to update the ordinance to make it fair and equitable to all residents as well as developers, the state came out and said, listen, we're going to do our own ordinance, which will supersede your ordinance. And you're going to get this new ordinance shortly. It was out for public discussion. I attended the first public meeting. It was online on Zoom, 2 hours long. No one spoke, but I was there. They had a second meeting, which I did not attend. That was when Jeff was at August.
They just concluded. It was like August 19th or something like that.
August 19th. The second one I did not attend because I figured I did the first one. That's good enough for me. Jeff reached out and called the DEP to try to get a straight answer, and there was no answer back from them. But our discussion with the Environmental Commission, that was, I think, June 19th, in the Environmental Commission, it was agreed we're going to wait for the state ordinance to come in place because the state ordinance will supersede ours. So
Yeah,
we've been waiting.
Information about that. The DEP states in their model ordinance that it only supersedes where it's more stringent than an existing ordinance. So we have an ordinance on the books that has more stringent terms. Those remain in place. And otherwise, we have to adopt the New Jersey state ordinance or the model that they provided. So that's a key distinction, because we do have a tree ordinance that in some respects is more stringent, an existing tree ordinance that is in fact more stringent than what that the DEP put out. So we would have to abide by that, and where it's less, we would have to adopt New Jersey's the DEP's ordinance.
Minimum standards, right?
Yeah. I mean, I can read the language from the document itself if you like, but it's municipal. It's however, it's a tree removal or replacement portion of. I have to start reading a little bit earlier. Municipalities that are accredited to the with the New Jersey Urban and Community Forestry Program, which Berkeley Heights is, may continue to follow their town's established forestry program requirements, provided their accredited program addresses tree removal and replacement commensurate with this model ordinance. However, if the tree removal or replacement portion of the program is less stringent than this ordinance, then that portion of this model ordinance must still be adopted. The details of a municipality's forestry program shall be incorporated by reference or contained within the municipality's adopted ordinance. So that's the point I was making.
All right, so let me just kind of just make sure I have it correct in my head. So the state comes out and says you guys got to do something about trees, but what you have to do if what you're like, where the state's going to come up with this thing about trees, but if you have something more stringent, more protective, I guess, then what you have is good. So as long as you're going to do something stricter than what we're going to do, you guys can do whatever you want. But when our stuff comes out, if there's any sort of leniency that you guys have that we don't allow for, you have to get back to standards, right? That's
right.
And then this is important to Berkeley Heights because of water issues that we've been having, and that trees are viewed as one pathway to mitigating that issue, right? Those are the two takeaways right now.
That's the value of a tree ordinance and requiring replacement of trees removed.
Okay. So what's the current discussion right now about our specific tree ordinance? Is it good enough? Is what we have on the books a good enough ordinance or no?
Well, as Richard pointed out, it's dated. It's quite dated, and it doesn't cover the cost of replacing a tree. So today it costs about over $400 to plant a new tree,
Holy shit.
a replacement tree. Our ordinance only charges $200 as an alternative to planting a replacement tree. And so if you're a developer, you have a lot of trees to take down, you're going to choose to pay into the trust fund, which is where the money that's paid in lieu of planting goes. $200 is a lot cheaper than paying $400 per tree. So that's the.
So, yeah, and to add to that, and this is where Jeff Manny and I discussed this. We don't want more burden on the residents. That's opinion only. The problem is there's other things too, and the current ordinance actually currently has this problem. The future one, it has to be discussed too. But right now we're in the middle of a particular tree pandemic with the emerald ash borer, and it requires funds to get hazardous trees removed too. And we're not even using money from that tree ordinance to do that. And that could be something else in which somebody's like, why can't we get trees removed? Well, because the town has financial constraints, and we'll just use the tree ordinance. Well, there's no money in it, so that's a balance. You don't want residents to pay into that if they don't have to. And the big philosophy on writing the ordinance is compliance, because I don't know what the numbers are, but I believe that right now it's low compliance for residents to get an ordinance. But if you use compliance as a good structure as to writing it, make it easy and cheap for residents to remove a tree when they feel like they want to on their property, you could do that as long as you can get funds from somewhere else. And my theory has always been it's two channels. You want to try to get it from the developers who do the most damage when they clear cut a field. And that fee, if they're clear cutting 300 trees times a certain multiple of a cost, that's where your revenue could generally come from. And that would put the onus on them to not do that.
All right, well, John, can we hear from Jeff and Manny, man? Like, could you stop hogging the whole fucking show? All right, this isn't about you, man. All right, this is about the trees. Could you ask Jeff and Manny? Could you ask one of them?
Yes, it's going to be.
Leah's just kind of make it about him again.
So
yes,
I've had a tree removed from my property. It was a process, but I think a necessary process, so to speak.
Murderer.
Well, it was in a bad spot. So I guess I have a couple questions. One of them would be, the work you do on council and in committee is very detailed, but to the residents, I think, we're looking for kind of the flashy, like, give me the bullet points, give me the cliff notes. So does a resident go through the same set of protocols and standards when they're getting one or two trees removed? The same as a builder who's maybe clear cutting, we're talking one or two trees as opposed to 30, 40, 100. Are there additional fees associated when you have a builder coming in? And then the third question, which we kind of got in but got away from it, would be, can we, or do we have the ability as a township, along with the Environmental Commission, to look at the areas in town that are at the highest risk for the storm drain, water runoff, or flooding? And can we put greater restrictions on those areas for people who are looking to remove trees, whether it be a resident or a builder?
I mean, Laura, thanks for the question. I can give it a go first, and Manny, please. And actually, Alvaro and Richard, I mean, you guys have been in the trenches with this along the way as well. So do residents want to take one or two down? It depends upon the, call it, whether that tree is a dead tree or a viable tree. And if that tree is a dead tree, it's a pretty straightforward process. It's a permit fee, and you got to wait for your permit. And then if the town agrees that the tree is dead, go ahead and take it down. If it's an emergency, you can take it down and follow up with Tom Bacco after the fact. If, let's say that this is a living, happy tree that homeowner wants to not have where it is, the current ordinance allows for that. There is a fee for removal of that tree. But if, let's say, the homeowner wants to remove a number of trees, then there are increased fees associated with that. This is a different process, though, than, like, let's say you're building an addition, or if a developer is coming to clear cut land, there's a separate approach for large numbers of trees that get removed, a no building permit, or I think it's maybe start of construction can begin until there's a tree plan in place. That tree plan, again, Alvaro and Richard, you guys probably know this better than I.
Tree replacement plan.
Yeah, tree replacement plan, where each and every tree is mapped on a lot, which ones are coming down. There's an agreement to that. And where are the new trees going to go? And if the developer does not want to put trees, or perhaps the lot is not amenable to put trees back in, then they can pay into the tree replacement fund. And that's that $200 that Alvaro was mentioning earlier. And I maybe forgot the third question, Laura.
So it was about, are we, as we look to have more residents, I mean, I think what we hear from our neighbors and friends, like, oh, we had that bad rain, my basement flooded, my street flooded, and all these, issues that are interconnected to us removing trees. Would we ever be able to, as a township, look into areas where we would possibly put further restrictions onto the ability for a resident to remove trees? Now, I know it wouldn't fall into like the fair and equitable category, but if we're looking at the long term here, I mean, you talk about the value and benefit we get to a mature tree as opposed to a new tree. That's irreplaceable as far as I'm concerned. So would there ever be a time where we would look to maybe introduce some sort of an ordinance about, residents living in a specific area of town would have greater restriction applied to their, wanting to get a permit to remove a tree?
Okay, thanks for repeating that again. I see the broader not wastewater, but storm water problem as a issue that goes well beyond just trees. And
that was going to ask about that. Are
I
trees
would
really the main thing?
welcome a broader conversation with the public about what elements of such a plan. I mean, we started some work within town council and the administration to re-inject ourselves into the Greenbrook Flood Control Commission. We're bringing together towns along the Passaic as well to talk about how to be managing that together as a more of a regional issue. That is just, those are pieces. Like, we've got all these different pieces of conversations going on, and we need to bring them all together to have a more cohesive strategy about it. And trees would be an important part of that.
Yeah, but I think what you're talking about, Laura, is to basically define areas of the town where you can't cut trees down because there's stormwater risk. And I think the challenge there that would have to be determined and defined by zoning, right? And it falls under municipal land use law, and there would have to be an ordinance that defines those areas. I think, Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there are some townships that restrict the cutting of trees in certain areas. So not that it can't be done. It can. I think it can be done.
Any place where there's wetlands, you're not allowed just to remove trees there, or are you allowed to build there? So there are some properties in town that are partially encroaching on wetlands. Generally, you're not going to find that, but you do find that there are some places that are encroaching on wetlands, and in those areas, you're not allowed to simply remove trees. When a builder comes in, like Toll Brothers did, then there is a whole program that starts up, as I think Jeff pointed out, that the developer has to show a plan for the removal of the trees, which trees are to be removed, and also a plan for replanting the trees. And though that plan includes the sizes of the trees and the varieties of trees. So Toll Brothers did that. And then as they were building, they found out, they realized that they were putting in a wall along the eastern border of that property. And they came back to the town and said, oh, When we put that wall in, we are going to be cutting the roots of additional trees. We need permits for that action. And the tree inspector came back and went through the list of trees. So you have got a control there on the part of the ordinance in general on removing trees. When homeowners, individual homeowners say, come in and I'm talking about actual cases. Homeowner comes in, that homeowner says, oh, I just noticed that this oak tree is dropping acorns. The acorns are going to kill my kids. I want to take down this oak tree. The tree inspector says that is not a reason to take down the oak tree and will not give a permit for that. So you do have that kind of situation where homeowners, especially new homeowners, come in and think that they can simply remove trees. That is controlled by the tree ordinance, the current tree ordinance.
I want to go back to something that Jeff brought up, which I think is like I'm all for trees, whatever. I do think there's a housing issue in New Jersey, and I'm more concerned about people having places to live than a tree. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm probably not going to be the popular person here, but
You never are.
We're not talking about tree houses, are we?
Close.
No. although we'll get to that. I do want to kind of talk a little bit about what other ways can we mitigate water. So Jeff brought up that there might be other ways of doing that. And I don't know if this is a part, are there any other ideas that on the table to sort of, Manny, I'll if you want to chime in, but are there other ideas that people or the town has in sort of resolving that issue or solving that problem?
John, it's a big thing, as Jeff stated and Richard stated and Alvaro. Everyone's in agreement on one thing. You take the holistic approach. If you just look at the tree,
but what are the components of that, right? Yeah, what are the specific? Yeah.
And then you go into drainage. You look at our drain lines. We spent quite a lot of money recently checking drain lines to see how the sewer system works. We're trying to see how everything works, even on new construction. When they put new construction, it's not just trees. They have to hook up to existing drainage. They have to hook up to sewer systems. They have to hook up a lot of systems. They put retention basins in. They put in swales. There's a lot of work. John Leo is one of the best gardens in the backyard for swale and water retention.
What's a swale?
Richard, give him the definition of swale.
So you've got an area, let us say, next to a lawn, and the water is flowing off the lawn. You can build a swale, which means basically a kind of a ditch that has plants or stones in it to allow the water to flow in there and then to seep into the soil.
Okay.
The water.
Because I thought this was going in another direction, because this is a family show. So
yeah, and you even want to slow the water down. When people have put in rain barrels, I think Richard said last year they had 6 people that took advantage of the rain barrel program in Berkeley Heights.
And that's been right. Sorry, Manny. That's been going on for a couple of years. About a half dozen people. We work with the watershed ambassadors to encourage people to use rain barrels to capture rainwater.
So John Leo wants to say something, unfortunately. So go ahead, John.
All right. So I think categories are easy to work with. So there's 3 things, if I ruled the world, what I would do to help with this. Dredge the river, I'm on board with.
Wait, what's the first one? I'm sorry.
Dredge the river?
Dredge the river. Okay.
That sounds intense.
So it's very intense.
And what would that do, John? What would dredging the river?
You have to get every on board up and down the river that's effective, create a coalition, and then go and get the money for it and get the Army Corps of Engineers to enact it. Like it's ridiculous.
And then open up like 30 cold case files because of the mafia in the Passaic, right?
I call that,
hey, there's no such thing as a mob.
what?
All right.
Called,
all right. What's the second thing?
On. Port Authority, New York, New Jersey, right there. There's number 1. All right. So second, a thing called smart growth. It's not just you look at the town, you decide where it's a program that's out there. You involve smart growth. I think our planner have kind of built the master plan around this. You say, okay, where can you build? Where can you not build? Where's your protected areas? Where's your swamps? Where's your areas that aren't protected but should be, and you can't build there? And just because right now we know that localized flooding is serious in a lot of places, and it's worse here because of our soil content in our swampy area. So smart growth would say, okay, well, they have a downtown area, well, we can do certain things there, but we also have to expand park space and green space and say that is going to be protected in perpetuity, so that it will be a place that works for the environment to keep the water at bay. The third is just, it's the best one. I like it. It's how MS4 works now. The municipal stormwater program works. It's that the township is allowed to take water that comes off your roof, your driveway, with all oil and fertilizer from the grass in it, and dump it into federally protected waters. That permit is two parts. It's a legal part and an education part. And they say, basically, it's part of the Clean Water Act. It basically says that these are the rules for allowing water in there, and how to keep it clean. But you have to educate your residents too. So if you have education's easy because you're not banging people over the head with compliance. You're just saying, hey, if you have a good education program on how to fertilize your lawn, how to use salt appropriately when salting the roads, and how to keep oils out of the water and algae blooms at a minimum, then we'll say we won't need more regulation. We could use less as long as you're educating your resident group well. And that's what might be a good benefit of moving the tree ordinance under the MS4 permit process. You might get, I'm sure there's consequences to it for residents. I'm sure it might increase costs, but I like that piece because you could expand your education program. And if the state likes it, they say, okay, well, Berkeley is doing a great job. We think they're actually putting clean water out there and reducing flooding because they have good compliance measures.
I mean, do you think the state would ever roll back on anything?
No.
Okay. I mean,
I think
It's not getting better. It's getting worse.
Yeah.
So they're not likely. But one of the things that Richard's always, and I'm going to jump in for Richard's sake, is always an advocate of to every homeowner that wants to modify their property, expand it in size, retain more water on your property. Every one of those gutters and leaders that come off of our houses go into the sewer system, and that overflows the system, and so it runs. It doesn't get, it hits the street. It's just going to run, and that contributes to flooding. If we could get all those people in those flood-prone areas to disconnect their downspouts from the drainage system and just allow it to absorb into the property, that would help tremendously. Not an easy task, obviously.
Actually, I would agree with you, Alvaro. People aren't really aware, but when we get real torrential rain, that overwhelms the wastewater treatment plant. And what that means is the wastewater treatment plant has to redirect flow into the Passaic directly without treatment in those situations. So it's a real problem.
Man, wait, you're talking about like sewer, like nasty sewer water going into the Passaic?
If homeowners have directed their down leaders
Nasty,
into the public sewer, and there are people in town who have that, I actually think that's a really bad thing, the wrong thing for homeowners to be doing.
Yeah,
that's gross, man.
It is.
There are some older homes that have this sewer line. The drain lines are running to a sewer. Because there's two different lines. There's a storm sewer line, and there's a sanitary sewer line, and there's a wastewater line, storm water line. So there's two different lines.
It's the sewer system. Richard, did you have something you want to add?
No, I was agreeing with what Manny was pointing out, that you have two different forms of water flowing. One is the wastewater from a home. That is the water you're using in your sink and your toilets. That's going to the wastewater treatment plant. The water that's coming from the downspouts or from the sump pumps, people have sump pumps, they pump that water out into the street. So that's water that goes into the street is going into the stormwater sewer. So we have a separate stormwater system, and a stormwater system that's separate from a wastewater system. Some towns have combined systems, and they're even worse off because then you've got that water overwhelming the wastewater treatment plants. So the stormwater runoff that comes from downspouts goes to the street, goes down the storm drains, and then goes down to the Passaic River. And as John pointed out, that includes water that's coming off of lawns and coming off of streets. So that means that there's what they call non-point source pollution. That means the pollution from car tires, from car oil, is all going down the sewers. It's nice that we have this adopt a drain program, but that doesn't stop that water from going down, that polluted water from going down the drains. So the next point on that is, okay, how do you reduce that stormwater that's coming off of the downspouts? One way is, as you said, the rain barrels. Another way is to build a little garden that captures the rainwater. And those are called rain gardens. We did that at the schools. So you have I think all of the schools except Hughes have rain gardens as model gardens. They're gardens, so they need to be maintained. But they're taking the water off of the impervious surfaces and allowing that water to seep into the underground, into the subsurface, and that goes down into an aquifer. What that's doing is slowing the flow of the water. It ultimately gets to the Passaic River, but it's slowing the flow of the water into the Passaic River, and that means that you're reducing the possibilities of flooding.
You're also
It
cleaning.
would be great if all of those homes that are up on the top of hills put in rain gardens, and that would help to reduce that stormwater flow. It would take a lot of rain garden, but it could be done over the time.
Yeah. The old systems were cisterns. When you build a house, when you built
Right.
a home, they wanted cisterns put in front of the house. Problem is that no one cleans out the cistern.
Yeah.
Right.
You have this 15,000 gallon holding tank. It just
It's
doesn't
supposed to be
work.
maintained.
Supposed to be maintained,
Nobody ever does.
and no one ever goes down into the hole and cleans it out.
Yeah.
Right, and we still have that system, Manny. We still have that system where people opt to put a dry well. That's a system that's a cistern that's in the ground.
Yeah.
And the same type of situation occurs. They cover up the cistern with dirt. Nobody inspects it to see whether it's still working. That's a problem.
And the big problem that Berkeley Heights has, and all of this sort of the context of all this, is Berkeley Heights has pretty poor soil. It doesn't doesn't absorb the water very well, and so it tends to run. And so that's a fundamental. I mean, that's why we focus on trees as an environmental solution. Is they're absorbing water. When you take those trees down, I've talked to homeowners whose neighbors have taken trees down, and as a result, now they have flooding on their property. And so it's a problem, and that's one solution. It's not the only solution, clearly.
And by the way, I'm gonna have to chime in for my geology degree. What you have in Berkeley Heights is a kaolic clay type of soil, and it runs.
I have no idea. What is it?
It's a clay. So kaolic clay is.
Was that
clay.
English?
It is. The clay forms almost plates. The molecules form plates, and the water just slides right off of the plates. And they use the same clay. You can make pottery with the clay once you clean it and filter it.
Right.
That's why we have a green lake next to that plant, because that chemical plant, because years ago they used to make bricks there.
Yeah.
And they just dug that all out, and that's all clay.
All clay. And what that happens, the clay layer in Berkeley Heights is anywhere from 5,000 to 15,000 feet deep, and that's left over from the glacial moraines. So what you have is a lot of just slow draining soil. Up north in Berkeley Heights, it's kaolin clay. South Jersey is the Pine Barrens. It's sand, and it soaks in at different rates. So we can't change the soil, but we can do our best to try to mitigate some of the damage.
Leo, did you want to say something?
I do.
Oh, go, Laura.
Oh,
Yeah, Leo, shut up. Go, Laura.
So I feel like we, I really was not, aside from John Leo constantly talking in my ear, I really was not very well versed in the area of trees and ordinances. But I think what, as a resident who has, woes when we get bad storms, where can we direct residents? Because all these things like rain basins and rain gardens, and there was that fancy word that we thought was inappropriate, about things we can do to kind of upgrade
Swale. The word is swale.
swale. Yes. Like where can we direct residents to go if they're watching this and they're like, you know what, we have a bit of a problem. If we can put in a rain garden, I love to garden, but I would have no idea how to get that started. Where on my property I should put it. Is there like a resource we can send residents to get more information?
Richard, you want to take that one?
Yeah, it's Richard.
Just Richard, can you provide your home address and social security number?
And date of birth, please. It's 4 digits of your
Date of birth? Yeah, it's tomorrow.
And the name of the person.
My birthday is tomorrow.
Oh, happy birthday.
Oh,
Oh, happy birthday. What was the name of your first pet and the first car?
But seriously, the easy thing is to do a search for Rutgers Rain Garden Manual for rain gardens. Another website that I like is Jersey Yards. They talk about planting trees and pollinators, so another good place to go. There is a third option that some towns are looking at. We haven't really discussed it seriously yet, and that is stormwater utility. I'm not going to try to discuss this at length, but basically what it means is that if a property is allowing water to flow off down the sewer, we have a utility that says, depending upon how much water you're releasing into the sewer, you're going to have to pay for that. And that often affects commercial properties because they have large impervious surfaces, whether it's driveways or roofs. And it is something that there are discussions on. I think, Jeff, I don't know whether you attended that. There was one presentation about that. That is slowly moving forward as a possibility for reducing stormwater runoff.
Yeah, I mean that last item, I think it first kind of came up. I don't know if it was Hudson or Passaic County, where they first kind of instituted these utilities, just like a water utility and just like a sewer authority or something like that. That kind of goes around and starts handing out direction to property owners. So it's an idea. I'm not going to opine on whether I think it's a good or bad idea. It's one of those ideas that's out there, just like creating ordinance for trees, just like creating a holistic plan for the flow of stormwater. I think you have to get your arms around the entirety of the problem. And then we can start, I think, getting towards some fundamental solutions that will really help.
Leo, did you want to say something, man?
No, just the Berkeley Heights Environmental Commission website also is a good starting point for a lot of the sources Richard's been talking about. They've been doing a good job trying to build up that as a single one-stop shop place for those kinds of information. But no, I think I just want to summarize. I think it's a very fast-paced place we live. And I think trees are important for mental health, and it's good for the environment for a lot of different reasons other than just the flooding. And that's what the importance of this this awareness product is for. It's just there's a lot that goes into it that I didn't know about at first, and it keeps on expanding. But no, I don't remember having to say anything. I'm just trying to waste your time.
The only solution that we really haven't talked about is a non-nuclear apocalypse. If you want the trees to come back.
Oh, you
White
said
House
non-
humanity, is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, nuclear. You're gonna fuck the
nuclear.
trees over.
You got
Yeah.
to different state it. Nuclear or non-nuclear?
Non-nuclear.
Non-nuclear.
You
Okay.
just have to watch out for the zombies. Sometimes zombies eat trees.
Chainsaws. Yeah.
That would be an interesting. That would be an interesting movie, like zombies that. So the zombies eat all the trees, and then that's how people die.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of like a slow burning apocalyptic movie.
It's Richard's birthday tomorrow. Don't give him night.
All right, so we're gonna end. I want to share something with everybody, and we're going to end
Oh,
on
God.
this.
Oh God.
And
You guys wanna-
when I think about trees, I get my mouse working.
Is he giving us a poem?
Kind of like a poem. It's going to be kind of
Okay,
like a
goodbye,
poem.
everyone. Bye.
No. We're going to listen to this together.
Oh
Have
Jesus.
you been up my wishing tree? It's where I come to think and dream. And now I'd like to show you my wishing tree. Jam on, where we can laugh and giggle and scream. Imagination
Mr. Jefferson, your
is
son
the
can't get up.
key. Won't you imagine along with me?
Mr. Jefferson?
We can be spacemen or pirates on the sea.
I'm
Jam on.
seeing.
Yes, we can do everything, and I mean everything.
You have like 10 seconds, guys.
Up in
Sit
my
it through.
wishing tree.
This is beautiful.
Oh!
Yeah. So, any thoughts on that?
Uh,
Great.
Plenty.
Go, love it.
Now I'm gonna have nightmares.
That's the point. That's the point of this whole thing. I want to, I really appreciate everybody's time. You guys are a wealth of information, like really a wealth of information. I'm a lot more informed than I was before coming in here. And I also appreciate everybody's work on this issue for the town. So yeah, thank you guys.
By the way, if I
All
can just add one last thing, is that
Sure.
we were awarded a grant by the DEP to plant trees in town. And what we can do is we can plant it on people's property in the right-of-way zone, which is what the township is able to do. But we don't want to plant trees without people's permission. So if you want a tree on your front lawn in the right-of-way zone, which is typically 6 to 8 feet from the street, raise your hand, reach out to Richard. We'd love to plant a tree. Our goal is to plant 185 trees a year for the next 3 years. And so we encourage people to do that.
I think we
Albert.
got one of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if
Just raise your
at
hand.
the homeowner's request, you can put it off the easement if they want it in the backyard or front yard. Is that correct?
No,
No,
I
Yeah.
thought, I
I think
thought
it's
you allowed-
complicated.
Oh.
that gets challenged.
that's right. We said.
How many trees can you plant on JP's front lawn? Can you do a fence of trees?
the
like-
hedgerow.
We can try. It's just-
If you want one of those standoffs that show up on CNN, you come with your fucking trees. Go ahead.
No fir trees though. It has to be native
Oh.
species. Richard,
Yeah,
give
no
us more native species.
communist trees. I
Right,
want
we're
these
doing native
American
species.
trees. American
40
capitalist trees.
Yep. Very nice.
All right.
Native species are better for the environment.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah,
Happy
no,
birthday.
thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us, guys.
Happy
Ready?
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.